In 1993, Alenia Kesi's wanderlust led her to the vibrant city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Her parents, Albano Kesi and Romina Power, were akin to Italy's golden couple, often dubbed the nation's Sonny and Cher. With a lineage peppered with celebrities, including the illustrious Mexican actress Linda Christian and the acclaimed American actor Tyrone Power as her grandparents. Alenia's tryst with the camera began early. At 13, she starred alongside her parents in Champagne and Paradiso. Her poise and charisma won hearts, and she eventually became the face of the Italian version of Wheel of Fortune. However, Alenia's heart throbbed for the written word. A luminary in her own right, she graduated top of her class in literature from King's College, London. She briefly traveled to Florida but returned to New Orleans after a horrifying experience where she felt her life was in danger. Her journey also took her to Mexico and Belize, but the magnetic pull of New Orleans drew her back. Alenia, fluent in English, found herself delving into the tapestry of the local culture. She often spent time with street performers and homeless individuals. Her father suspected that she might have been experimenting with drugs during this time. However, for Alenia, this was an exploration and she planned to pen a novel based on her experiences. She took up residence at the Ludale Hotel on St. Charles Avenue, sharing a room with a 54-year-old street musician, Alexander Masekela. Masekela was known to have a shady past, including drug use and allegations of sexual assault. Despite this, Alenia seemed captivated by him, even referring to him as my master. He had, according to her, opened her up to new intellectual horizons. On January 6, 1994, Alenia was last seen in the French Quarter of New Orleans. Her parents, who had last spoken to her on New Year's Day, grew increasingly concerned and filed a missing person report on January 18. They even traveled to Louisiana to aid in the search. Alenia left behind all her belongings at the hotel, including her passport, bag, clothes, camera, luggage, and notebooks. Masekela, who presented her passport to the hotel staff and tried to pay the bill using her traveler's checks, claimed to have no knowledge of her whereabouts. The mystery deepened when a security guard reported seeing a woman resembling Alenia leap into the Mississippi River on the night of January 6. The woman had exclaimed, "I belong in the water," before jumping. While struggling against the current, she called for help but was soon swallowed by the waters. Although there was a resemblance, it was never confirmed if it was indeed Alenia. While the authorities believed she might have drowned, her body was never found. The currents could have carried her into the Gulf of Mexico. Over the years, there have been numerous unconfirmed sightings of Alenia in the United States and Europe. She remains a ghost, with whispers of her presence lingering in the wind. Before her disappearance, Alenia was a promising literary student at King's College in London. She had briefly tasted fame in Italy, having appeared in a film and on the Italian version of Wheel of Fortune. Her family, who were entertainment icons in Italy, were devastated by her disappearance. Even today, opinions within her family vary on whether Alenia is still alive. Her case remains unsolved. Erica Hunt was a young woman full of life, known for her broad smile and infectious laughter. As a loving mother, daughter, sister, and friend, she brought joy to those around her. On July 3, 2016, Erica attended a family barbecue, where she was last seen. The next day, under mysterious circumstances, she made an unexpected visit to her sister and brother-in-law's house, where she asked for some money to buy cigarettes before departing. On July 4, at 12:49 p.m., she made her last Facebook post, a birthday message for a friend. Eyewitnesses reported having seen Erica in an alley on Hirsch Road between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. on that same day. The night before, Erica's child had stayed with her mother. Erica had plans for the day. She was going to take her child and a friend's child on a trip to Lake Charles, and she had also scheduled an appointment to have her hair done. However, Erica never showed up for any of these plans. Concerned, Erica's family and friends reported her missing on July 6. The investigation, however, did not yield many leads. On September 13, 2016, local law enforcement received a tip claiming that Erica's remains could be found at a house on Hirsch Alley. Cadaver dogs were brought in, but only animal remains were discovered. In a bittersweet twist, in 2018 skeletal remains were found while authorities were searching for a different missing child. For 3 years, the DNA from these remains had been in the system without a match. It was only through the efforts of the DNA Doe Project that a connection was made to Erica's DNA. The identification was confirmed earlier this year. This development marked a turning point in Erica's case. What had started as a missing person investigation had now transformed into a murder case. Though her family now had a semblance of closure in knowing her fate, the cloud of grief and the quest for justice loomed large. Erica Hunt's murder remains unsolved, and her friends and family continue to seek answers and justice for the young woman whose life was tragically cut short. On March 7, 1974, Gabriel Caparino was last seen in New Orleans, Louisiana. He had been in the city for a week on a business trip. He drove to the French Quarter to hear jazz music after leaving the Intercontinental Hotel on Canal Street. He was operating a blue 1974 Mercury Montego that he had borrowed from Hertz. On the phone that evening, he informed his wife and 2 teenage kids that he would be returning home the next day. He has not been seen or heard from since. Unused airline tickets, partly packed bags, and presents for his family were discovered in Caparino's hotel room after he vanished. 3 hippie types used his credit card at a Sears shop to purchase a camera and some clothing 4 days after he was last seen. The group produced Caparino's Allstate insurance card when requested for further identification for the credit transaction. Caparino's rental automobile was discovered abandoned 10 days after the credit card was used. It had apparently been fingerprint-free and the keys were in the door lock. However, according to Caparino's family, it is unlikely that the automobile could have been there and in that state for as long as claimed without being taken. Veteran of the U.S. Navy, Caparino. He resided in Yorktown Heights, New York, and worked as an executive for the General Foods Company's coffee business at the time of his disappearance. His wife claims he was a dedicated husband, father, and employee, and there is no proof that he had any troubles severe enough to prompt him to leave. In 1979, he was ruled to be legally dead. His case has not been resolved. On November 24, 1956, an ominous fog lay heavy upon Frenier Beach, near La Place, Louisiana. Beneath the murky waters of Lake Pontchartrain, a haunting secret was about to unravel. This is the story of Audrey Mo, a story that still hangs like a specter over the bayou. The early morning air was crisp as a local hunter and his child made their way through the dense undergrowth surrounding Lake Pontchartrain. There, nestled among the cypress trees, a blue 1953 Nash Rambler stood silently. The hunter peered through the car's windows and made out the silhouettes of a man and a woman, later identified as 46-year-old Thomas Adolph Hoddard Sr. and Audrey Mo. As daylight began to peer through the veil of fog, the hunter could see the car parked as if someone intended to return. Little did he know that this seemingly innocent scene would twist into a sinister tale. The following morning, the car still sat undisturbed, but this time with its passenger door ajar. The hunter approached with trepidation. The air inside the car was heavy with an eerie silence. A picnic basket lay unattended, a pillow and sleeping bag seemed inviting. But the tranquility was shattered when he found Hoddard's lifeless body, a gunshot wound through his back, laying atop the sleeping bag. Time of death was estimated to be between 7 to 30 hours before discovery. Outside, a woman's purse lay discarded. The car's floor held women's clothes, shoes, and eyeglasses. Nearby, barefoot prints, likely belonging to a woman, raced toward the woods, spaced widely as if she ran for her life. Alongside, a man's footprints followed. A few feet away, the hunter spotted a set of car keys that did not belong to the Nash Rambler, suggesting a struggle. Where the footprints ended, a single tire mark, possibly from a motorcycle, hinted at an ominous departure. Audrey Mo was a divorced mother of 3, residing with her children and mother in Baton Rouge. Employed as a buyer for Kaiser Aluminum, Audrey was known to be a doting mother. However, her disappearance revealed that beneath the surface of this tranquil life, a tempest was brewing. Unbeknownst to their families, Audrey and Yord had been locked in a passionate affair for 2 years. On weekends, under the guise of work, they met in secret. Audrey even assumed Yord's last name on occasion. Audrey had woven another mysterious layer to her life. She had claimed to have adopted a baby girl, Jacqueline, while seeking treatment for a nervous breakdown in St. Louis. However, when she disappeared, it was revealed that Audrey never left Baton Rouge and that Jacqueline was her biological child, born under the name Audrey A. Yord. After her disappearance, Audrey's 2 older children were sent to live with their paternal grandmother. 2 weeks later, the grandmother received a chilling phone call from someone claiming to be Audrey. As the haunting wind swept across Lake Pontchartrain, the community was left to wonder, what secrets did the murky waters hold? Where was Audrey Mo, and what sinister events had unfolded that November morning? The phone rang with an urgency that cut through the still night air. Norma picked up, her heart racing. "This is Audrey, Mom," the voice whispered, heavy with despair. "I desperately need help." The voice bore the familiar lilt of Audrey's accent. "Where are you, Audrey?" Norma's voice broke. The line went dead. A chilling silence enveloped the room. The ghostly call led the police to the vibrant, hauntingly beautiful streets of New Orleans. New Orleans, with its colorful past and the mysteries it hides within the shadows of the French Quarter, began to reveal fragments of a puzzle. Witnesses at the iconic Café du Monde spoke of a disheveled woman whose somber eyes and tarnished grace painted the portrait of Audrey. She had left behind a table with uneaten beignets and cold coffee, a lingering hint of despair hanging in the air. A glimmer of hope led the police to a housewife who claimed Audrey visited her, seeking refuge and a phone to call her mother. The voice that whispered through the line, longing for the comfort only a mother can give, had been Audrey's last cry for help. 2.5 years later, under the moonlight shadowing Frenier Beach, the echo of a gunshot shattered the silence once again. Leonie Martinez, wounded but resilient, brought her attacker to light. Edmond Joseph Dewey, a sinister figure whose dark obsessions were veiled behind a facade of willingness to help search for Audrey, emerged from the shadows. As investigators pieced together Dewey's twisted tale, they discovered relics of stolen lives, lipstick applicators, handbags, and dark secrets. Amongst them was a black fabric handbag, whispering tales of Audrey's lost soul. As decades wove stories and legends around Audrey's vanishing, the whispers of the swamps beckoned once more. Marvell Carana's voice trembled as she shared the morbid revelation from her father, Ernest Acosta, who had lived in the shadows of the crime scene. A tale of dark secrets spilled forth. He spoke of Audrey's life extinguished and her body concealed within the cold iron confines of a Civil War cannon, an artifact that would later resurface and stand as a grim sentinel in the parish courthouse. Within the iron and the marsh, the swamps held Audrey in an eternal embrace. Amidst the haunting whispers and the silence of the swamps, a mother's heart yearned for closure. Moving far away to Oregon, Audrey's mother clung to the fragile hope that one day, her Audrey would find her way back to her. Audrey's young daughter, Jacqueline, now the keeper of a legacy shrouded in mystery, grew up under the warmth of family love. As time stands still within the haunting beauty of the swamps, one question lingers in the hearts of those who still remember: where are you, Audrey? On January 9, 2003, a mysterious disappearance shook the streets of New Orleans, Louisiana. Ashley E. Alford, a young woman expecting a child, vanished under perplexing circumstances. The events surrounding her disappearance remained shrouded in uncertainty, leaving her loved ones desperate for answers. It all began when Ashley encountered Nicole Johnson, a woman she had met at a doctor's office during a prenatal visit. Johnson, empathizing with Ashley's recent loss, generously offered to provide her with baby furnishings. Eager to accept the kind gesture, Ashley arranged to pick up the items from Johnson's residence. According to Johnson's account, the last time she saw Ashley was in the vicinity of Franklin Avenue, near the 4500 block of Demont-Luzon Street. Ashley was apparently engaged in a heated argument with her boyfriend over the phone as she attempted to leave Johnson's house with the furniture. Unfortunately, Ashley's 1992 Ford Mustang failed to start, prompting Johnson to contact her boyfriend for assistance. It was at this moment that Ashley allegedly crossed the street to a nearby gas station, vanishing without a trace. As the days turned into weeks, Ashley's concerned parents, residing in Harahan, Louisiana, embarked on a tireless search for their daughter's vehicle. However, their efforts proved fruitless, and the investigation took a perplexing turn when reporters discovered that there was number 4500 block on Demont Luzon Street, where Ashley was reportedly last seen. Authorities are now focused on locating and speaking with Nicole Johnson and Ashley's boyfriend, identified as Jose or Joseph Lewis Hill, in hopes of unraveling the truth behind the puzzling disappearance. Despite the passage of time, Ashley's parents hold onto the unwavering belief that their daughter is still alive. To this day, her father in Harahan keeps the same phone number, hopeful that Ashley might reach out to him. Assisting in the investigation, authorities from Texas have joined forces with local law enforcement, intensifying the search for answers. On November 5, 1990, the town of Natchitoches, Louisiana was forever changed when Avery Evans, a young girl full of life and aspirations, vanished without a trace. Avery's day started innocently, as she went door to door selling sweets to raise funds for her school orchestra. Little did anyone know that this simple act would set in motion a series of events that would leave the community gripped with fear and uncertainty. As the sun began to set, Avery made a phone call to a friend, expressing her intention to deliver a few more candy bars before returning home. She was last seen at the intersection of 5th and Stevens Street at around 4:30 p.m. But Avery never made it back home, and her family never heard from her again. Concern turned to panic as her parents filed a missing persons report later that evening, desperately hoping for her safe return. Despite exhaustive efforts by law enforcement and detectives, there were no immediate leads or clues to Avery's whereabouts. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. She had been riding a distinctive multicolored Maury bicycle at the time of her disappearance, but even that seemed to have vanished along with her. Throughout the investigation, Avery's family underwent extensive questioning, a standard procedure in missing persons cases. However, they were eventually ruled out as suspects. Investigators scoured the Evans residence, hoping to find anything that could shed light on Avery's disappearance, but their search yielded no significant leads. The only item missing from the house was a binder containing names and phone numbers of contacts made after Avery went missing. Rumors swirled, drawing a connection between Avery's disappearance and the alleged kidnapping of Kimberly Norwood in May 1989. However, no concrete evidence linked the two cases, and no suspects were identified in Norwood's kidnapping. The investigation took a chilling turn when investigators received an anonymous letter from someone claiming knowledge of the case. The letter contained remorseful words, stating that the evidence had gone up in ashes, implying that Avery had met an unfortunate fate. Initially dismissed as a potential hoax, investigators later discovered that the letter was sent from Minnie, Louisiana, and linked it to a man named Philip Louis DeSalle. Philip had been Avery's neighbor in 1990, and she had sold him sweets on multiple occasions in the month leading up to her disappearance. Disturbingly, Avery had shared her home address and phone number with him, unaware of the darkness that resided within him. In January 1991, Philip was arrested and charged with abduction and first-degree murder in connection with Avery's case. During his subsequent confession, Philip admitted to enticing Avery into his house and strangling her there. He claimed to have disposed of her bicycle in Sybil Lake and discarded her body in a trash bin. Despite extensive searches of the landfill, law enforcement was unable to locate Avery's remains. The lake where her bicycle was found became a haunting reminder of the tragedy that had befallen her. In court, the lack of a victim's body complicated the charge of first-degree murder. However, Philip ultimately pleaded guilty to both abduction and murder. He was sentenced to 2 concurrent 40-year terms in prison, with an additional 10-year sentence. When asked why he committed such a heinous act, he simply stated that he had a bad day and just snapped. Years later, the investigation into Avery's alleged kidnapping was reopened, leading to the search of the property where Philip had resided at the time. Regrettably, the search yielded no new evidence. Avery's family, determined to seek justice for their beloved daughter, filed a petition to deny Philip's parole when he became eligible for release in 2007. Their plea was heard, and the parole was denied. However, on January 22, 2015, to the dismay and outrage of Avery's family and the community, Philip was granted parole and released from prison. Despite serving only a portion of his original sentence, he was back in society. Outraged citizens shared his address on social media, leading to concerns for public safety. Consequently, his housing arrangement was altered, and he was soon detained again for violating the terms of his parole. As of the present, Philip is under supervision in Alexandria, Louisiana. His movements are closely monitored through a GPS tracker until July 30, 2040, the date his parole expires. He is subject to a strict curfew and must report any travel plans to the authorities. However, his release continues to be a source of anguish and frustration for Avery's family, who firmly believe that he should have remained behind bars for a far longer period. Avery, a gifted violinist and an exceptional student, had a promising future that was tragically cut short. Her sisters, who were close to her, have struggled to recover from the loss. While her body has never been found, the circumstances surrounding her disappearance strongly indicate foul play. Wildac was last seen at her residence on Ponder Road in Sibley, Louisiana, on March 23, 1992, at approximately 7:30 a.m. Sadly, she has not been heard from since that day, leaving her disappearance shrouded in mystery. At the time of her vanishing, Cross was in the midst of an affair and had separated from her husband. However, they were attempting to reconcile their relationship and had even scheduled an appointment with a therapist in Shreveport, Louisiana. While her husband attended the appointment, Cross failed to show up. Curiously, Cross's husband chose not to inform her family about her disappearance for 3 days. When he finally revealed the news, her family promptly reported it to the authorities. According to her husband, Cross allegedly called him on several nights after she was last seen, assuring him that she was fine and planning to relocate to another state. However, the veracity of these phone calls remains unverified. Notably, Cross was an accomplished barefoot water skier, participating in competitions across the country and gaining recognition in water ski magazines. In 1984, she ranked as the second best barefoot skier in the United States and the fifth best globally. Alongside her husband, Cross operated a jewelry store in Bossier City, Louisiana, in 1992. Tragically, in 2006, Wildac was declared legally deceased. Despite extensive efforts to solve her case, it remains unresolved. Norris Brister, born into a large family in New Orleans as the 12th of 13 children, would go on to create a sizable family of his own. With 4 sons and 4 daughters, Norris was a proud father and grandfather to a total of 8 children and 17 grandchildren. Known for his diligent work ethic and infectious smile, Norris was described by his co-workers as a kind-hearted individual who enjoyed telling jokes and brightening the atmosphere wherever he went. He cherished spending time with his grandchildren, engaging in activities such as playing football and shooting pool. At the age of 51, Norris resided on the same street as the crime scene, living with his daughter Cantrell and her 3 children. He worked as a food runner at the Cornet restaurant on Bourbon Street in the vibrant French Quarter. Often, he would stay after work to engage in a game of pool with his co-workers, wrapping up his shift just past 11 p.m. However, on this particular evening, he decided to head straight home. It was on the night of Saturday, July 30, 2016, just before midnight, that Norris made his final journey home from the Cornet restaurant. Typically, he would hitch a ride from a friend, but on this occasion, he opted to take the bus that was heading towards New Orleans East. After disembarking the bus, he continued his walk home from the intersection of Morrison Road and Newcastle Street. According to his daughter, this route would often cause him to arrive home well past midnight. Tragically, in the early hours of July 31, 2016, shortly before 1 a.m., gunshots rang out in the 7700 block of Keats Street. Norris was shot and found lying on the street, succumbing to his injuries at the scene. Cantrell, Norris' daughter, arrived home while the police were still investigating the crime scene, unaware of her father's fate. She pointed out his tennis shoes and backpack that were left on the road, hoping to assist the responding officers. Initially, they dismissed the possibility that the victim was her father, deeming him too young based on the information she provided. However, 3 hours later, authorities confirmed that the man found dead on the street was indeed Norris, her beloved father. The New Orleans Police Department's homicide detectives can be contacted at 658-5300, and information regarding the case can be provided to Crime Stoppers at 822-1111. As of now, this case remains unresolved, leaving Norris Brister's family and loved ones searching for answers and justice in the face of this devastating loss. A.J. Brer, a well-known figure in the town of Houma, Louisiana, was a 50-year-old man who had spent his entire life there. With a population of 31,000, Houma was nestled in the heart of Cajun country, known for its picturesque bayous and majestic magnolia trees. A.J. had raised 3 children and worked as a salesperson at Earl Williams' clothing store for over 3 decades. He had earned a reputation as a reliable and trustworthy individual, always ready to lend a helping hand. According to his daughter, Melissa Tardo, A.J. was a kind and pleasant person, someone whom everyone knew they could depend on. However, A.J.'s journey to earn such trust was not without its challenges. He had battled with alcoholism for many years, which eventually led to his arrest for drunk driving and the dissolution of his marriage in 1974. Nevertheless, by 1991, A.J. had managed to conquer his demons and maintain sobriety for 8 years. Almost every evening, A.J. could be found at the Easy Desert Club, a support group for individuals struggling with drinking problems. The club, housed in a former warehouse on Bernard Street, served as the local chapter of Alcoholics Anonymous and hosted regular AA meetings. A.J. held the role of secretary for the chapter and was dedicated to supporting others on their path to sobriety. He became more accountable, dependable, and reliable through his involvement with the group, and he developed deeper friendships as he interacted with fellow members. Despite his past struggles, A.J. maintained a positive relationship with his ex-wife and children, and his family embraced him when he came out as gay. On the evening of August 28, 1991, A.J. attended an AA meeting at the club and stayed afterward to help with cleanup. He was one of the last to leave and departed at around 8:30 p.m. Half an hour later, he made a stop at the Barrow Street Time Saver convenience store to purchase a quart of milk. He expressed his discontent with the rising price of milk to the cashier and mentioned that he was heading home, where he lived with his daughter Tanya. However, A.J. never arrived at his destination, and Tanya reported him missing the following morning. 2 days after A.J.'s disappearance, his silver 4-door 1988 Ford Tempo was discovered abandoned at Jim Bowie Park, just across the street from the Easy Desert Club. Melissa and her sisters quickly arrived at the scene, and Melissa contacted the police, requesting their presence before leaving her home. The car was locked, leaving them unable to access its contents. Overwhelmed with fear and emotion, they began to cry, sensing that something was wrong. Detective Troy Naquin arrived shortly afterward, and the shattered front blinker plate confirmed that the vehicle belonged to A.J. Melissa had a deep intuition that her father's lifeless body was in the trunk. It seemed out of character for him to leave his car visible to everyone and then vanish, leading her to suspect foul play. However, her assumption proved to be incorrect. The trunk did not contain A.J.'s body, and no evidence of wrongdoing was found. Despite conducting a thorough search of the park, investigators came up empty-handed. With minimal leads and the possibility of forensic evidence being washed away by heavy rains, the case became increasingly challenging. A.J.'s wallet, empty of cash, was discovered hidden under the front seat of the car. Inside the trunk, his personal and AA chapter checkbooks were found, along with a brown bank bag containing $165 of AA group funds. The community was left perplexed by A.J.'s disappearance. He seemed like the last person in Houma who would vanish without a trace. Authorities launched an immediate investigation and distributed missing persons flyers across the state. Soon, several witnesses came forward with intriguing accounts of seeing A.J. after his disappearance. One witness, Kenneth Pellegrin, reported seeing A.J. on the same day his car was found. Kenneth had known A.J. since childhood and greeted him, but A.J. only responded with a brief okay while using a payphone. Kenneth noticed that A.J. appeared different, wearing casual attire that was unlike his usual style. A red compact car with 3 men inside was parked nearby, and A.J. seemed nervous and looked as though he was being watched. When Kenneth returned to the store, both A.J. and the car were gone. Another witness later reported seeing A.J. in a red compact car with 3 men on a rural road outside of town. A.J. didn't respond when waved at, which was uncharacteristic of him. These sightings led Melissa to believe that someone knows something about her father's disappearance. Both witnesses had known A.J. for a long time and saw him in the same type of car with 3 men. She is convinced that there are people out there with knowledge about what happened to A.J. 2 weeks passed without any further sightings or leads. Then, a chilling handwritten note arrived at the police station. The note described a scenario where A.J., intoxicated, accidentally shot himself in the stomach. It claimed that a friend placed his body in a cotton bag with drawstrings and rolled it over a steep grassy bayou bank near a dam. Detective Naquin noted that the location mentioned in the note matched where A.J.'s car was found. Despite extensive searches by the water patrol units, no evidence was found to support the note's claims. The investigation took another strange turn when authorities received a report suggesting that A.J. might still be alive. A resident named Christy Boudreau, located 30 miles from Houma, observed a van driving back and forth on her street. The driver, appearing lost, stopped in front of Christy's house, got out of the vehicle, and retrieved a bag from the middle of the van. The man seemed nervous and smelled of alcohol. Although Christy initially rejected his offer to buy frozen fish, she later recognized him from a missing persons flyer. When shown a photo lineup by Detective Naquin, she was nearly certain that the man she saw was A.J. Detective Naquin acknowledged that A.J. was a recovering alcoholic and speculated that if he had relapsed, various scenarios could have unfolded. A.J. might have experienced a blackout and forgotten his identity. However, his family firmly believes that he did not choose to disappear but was abducted. They argue that the discovery of his wallet and checkbook in the car indicates foul play. They also point out that A.J. was scheduled to receive an award at an AA conference, making it unlikely that he would willingly miss such an event. Melissa wonders if A.J. stumbled upon something he shouldn't have while at the park, or if he was attacked while trying to help someone in need. A report from a golf course maintenance worker who witnessed 3 men forcing another man into a white car near the park adds to the mystery, although it provided limited information. The truth behind A.J.'s disappearance remains elusive. While there is some evidence suggesting he may have been kidnapped, the motive for such an act remains unknown. The message describing A.J.'s accidental suicide is believed to be a cruel hoax. Detective Naquin states that A.J. is still classified as missing, and there is no concrete evidence of foul play. However, there is also no evidence to suggest that A.J. simply walked away from his life. The authorities remain puzzled about what truly happened to him. Melissa expresses how out of character it is for A.J. to leave his family without any notification. The time since his disappearance has been agonizing for them, and they long for closure and answers. The case of A.J. Bro continues to haunt the community of Houma, Louisiana. The sightings, the mysterious note, and the conflicting evidence have left everyone searching for the truth. The hope remains that one day the secrets surrounding A.J.'s disappearance will be unveiled, bringing an end to the uncertainty and providing solace to his loved ones. Despite extensive investigations, the case of A.J. Bro's disappearance remains unsolved. 2 separate witnesses claim to have seen A.J. with 3 unidentified men in a red compact car shortly after he went missing. Another witness reported seeing 3 men forcing a 4th man into a white vehicle in the same park where A.J.'s car was later found abandoned, the fact that money was left behind in A.J.'s Carr led the police to believe that robbery was not a motive for his disappearance. This has left investigators with more questions than answers. On August 12, 1998, AJ's daughters filed a petition with the local courts to have him officially declared dead. The court granted their request, and a judge declared him legally deceased. This step was taken to facilitate handling certain aspects of AJ's finances. In 2006, Ronald Dominique, a serial killer known for targeting gay men in Louisiana, was arrested. AJ's family briefly wondered if he could have been one of Dominique's victims. However, law enforcement noted that Dominique primarily targeted transient and homeless gay men, which did not match AJ's circumstances. Moreover, Dominique's known murder spree began in 1997, several years after AJ's disappearance. Consequently, authorities do not believe AJ was one of Dominique's victims. Tragically, all of AJ's siblings have since passed away. In January 2016, Kenneth, the friend who had seen AJ on the day he vanished, also passed away from a heart attack. AJ's family continues to hold out hope for answers and closure. To encourage any potential leads, they are offering a $1,000 reward for information that could lead to an arrest or provide vital information in the case. On October 22, 1986, Bambi Brentley disappeared in Leesville, Louisiana. She went to a local convenience store called Lebo's where she bought a drink and used the payphone to call her brother at the pit grill. She asked him to bring the car so she could go out with her boyfriend. Brentley and her brother lived together at Tower Trailer Park. When her brother returned home within half an hour, Brentley was not there, but the drink container from Lebo's was found on the floor of the trailer. Her brother left the car and keys for her and got a ride back to the pit grill with a friend. When he returned home in the early morning hours, Brentley was still missing, and the drink was in the same spot on the floor. She has not been heard from since. Two other women who were similar in age and appearance to Brentley went missing under similar circumstances in the same area. Karen Eats Hill disappeared in 1988 and was later found raped, shot to death, and tied to a tree 10 miles away. A man pleaded guilty to manslaughter in her case, served 20 years in prison, and was paroled in 2017. Pamela Miller's skeletal remains were discovered at Fort Polk in December 1989, but her murder remains unsolved. It is unclear whether these cases are connected to Brentley's disappearance. At the time of her disappearance, Brentley worked as a car salesperson at Pines Auto Dealership. She had recently moved to the area from Bartlett, Tennessee. Brentley had no history of drug use or leaving without notice. She was known for frequenting local clubs and had a large circle of friends and acquaintances in the area. Brentley's case remains unsolved, and her older brother has passed away. However, her family continues to search for answers. While some sources mention December 22, 1986, as the date of her disappearance, the most commonly accepted date is October 22, 1986. Jonathan King and Deborah Smith were proud parents of their only daughter, Monique Juanita, who brought immense joy into their lives. Monique, a devoted single mother, was known for her kindness and unwavering work ethic. She cherished her 3 children above all else and would go to great lengths to provide for them. When she wasn't at work, she dedicated her leisure time to creating precious memories with her kids. Monique's children, Amaya Smith, Justin Sims Jr., and Jumarin Sims, were a testament to her love and dedication. All 3 children were born during Monique's marriage to Justin Sims Sr., their respective fathers. Amaya, the eldest, was a bright and ambitious 7th grader. She was being recognized for upholding the school's principles and maintaining perfect attendance. Justin Jr., the middle child, was a 5th grader who had achieved a remarkable streak of flawless attendance. Jumarin, the youngest of the siblings, was a kindergarten student eagerly looking forward to learning and playing with his friends. In 2015 or 2016, the Smith-Sims family, along with their beloved white dog, moved into a modest yet cozy white brick rental house located at the intersection of Touro and Mandolin Streets in the desirable Gentilly district of New Orleans. The neighborhood was renowned for its strong sense of community, where everyone looked out for one another. The Smith-Sims family quickly became known as a polite and peaceful presence in the neighborhood. Their children could often be seen playing joyfully with their dog in the yard, while Monique and Justin occasionally enjoyed grilling and spending quality time together as a family. However, the neighbors gradually noticed that the family was seldom home. There were moments when it seemed as though they had vanished, only to be seen sporadically, waiting with their backpacks at the bus stop. During this time, Justin Sr., Monique's estranged spouse, departed from the house they had once shared. According to Justin Sr., the couple's growing differences led to their separation. He made a fresh start by relocating to Jackson, Mississippi, 3 hours away from New Orleans, where he secured employment. As the events unfolded on the fateful Friday morning of March 10, 2017, Justin Sr. was diligently engaged in his work. On the preceding Thursday, the temperature had reached a pleasant high of 77 degrees, painting an idyllic atmosphere. Little did Monique, Amaya, Justin Jr., and Jumarin know that this would be their last night together. As they retired to bed, unaware of the imminent tragedy, the temperature began to drop, marking an eerie prelude to the horrors that awaited them. In the dead of night, an intruder broke into the family's home through the back door, forever shattering their peaceful existence. Authorities suspected that the intruder specifically targeted Monique's bedroom first, perceiving her as the greatest threat due to her age. The intruder callously unleashed a hail of bullets, repeatedly shooting Monique in the face. The assailant then ascended the stairs, discovering the 3 innocent children and subjecting them to the same brutal fate. Amaya, in a heart-wrenching twist of fate, witnessed the merciless shooting of her younger brother, Jumarin, who, at the tender age of 6, was oblivious to the impending tragedy. In the early hours of the morning, a terrified child dialed 911, desperately pleading for assistance. The police and emergency medical services promptly responded to reports of a gunshot at the white brick house on the intersection of Touro and Mandolin Streets. They arrived to a scene enveloped in mystery and unspeakable horror. Amaya, the brave 12-year-old survivor, managed to make the distress call despite suffering from a gunshot wound to her face. The police wasted no time in locating her and swiftly rushed her to the hospital for urgent medical attention, fighting to save her life. As law enforcement officials proceeded to investigate the house, hoping to find any clues about the other family members, they were met with a devastating sight. They discovered the lifeless bodies of Monique, Justin Jr., and Jumarin, each bearing the horrific wounds inflicted upon them by the intruder. Multiple shots had been mercilessly fired at close range, leaving no doubt about the brutality of the crime. The news of the unimaginable tragedy reached Monique's parents, Jonathan and Deborah, who were overcome with indescribable grief as they arrived at the scene. The anguish and sorrow were unbearable as they struggled to come to terms with the loss of their beloved daughter and grandchildren. The shocking event sparked a wave of disbelief and outrage throughout the community. Soon, a crowd began to gather outside the house, consisting of concerned neighbors and even Justin Sr.'s closest friend. The pain and sorrow felt by the community were palpable as they watched the authorities painstakingly process the scene. Rumors and speculations quickly circulated, with some members of the community pointing fingers at Justin Sr. as a possible perpetrator. The gravity of the accusations did not deter Justin Sr. from granting an interview with the local news media, desperate to clear his name. In front of a watching audience, he vehemently denied any involvement in the heinous crime. With a strong alibi corroborated by the police, Justin Sr. insisted that he could never harm his family in such a horrific manner. However, others speculated that the motive behind the crime might have been connected to a drug transaction, suggesting that Justin Sr. owed money to dangerous individuals who sought revenge by targeting his family. Despite the lingering questions and unverified theories, the investigation into the murders of Monique, Amaya, Justin Jr., and Jumarin remained active. Years later, the case remained unresolved, with no arrests made and the true identities of the perpetrators still unknown. In a desperate attempt to shed light on the tragedy, authorities unveiled a composite sketch of a potential suspect. They believed that this individual had some familiarity with Monique's home and family, raising hopes that someone within the community might recognize the culprit. The unresolved case cast a long shadow of grief and uncertainty over the lives of those left behind. Monique's parents, Deborah and Jonathan, continued to grapple with the unbearable loss of their daughter and grandchildren, their hearts forever burdened by the unhealed wounds. Until justice is served and the truth behind the brutal crime is uncovered, the memory of that tragic Friday, March 10, 2017, will continue to haunt the community, urging them to remain vigilant and united in their pursuit of answers. The search for the murderer or murderers presses on, as investigators tirelessly work to bring closure to the shattered lives and bring those responsible to account for their unspeakable actions. On September 26, 2007, Albert Block was last seen in the 2200 block of Houma Boulevard in Metairie, Louisiana at 9:45 p.m. He disappeared and has not been heard from since. The caseworker at Responsibility House, a housing program for individuals with mental illness or substance abuse issues, reported him missing on November 2. Block had been estranged from his family for several years. At the time of his disappearance, Block was driving a silver 1995 Volvo 850 with the Louisiana license plate number NTJ 453. The car was later discovered parked behind an apartment complex in Metairie. In December 2007, Mark Brer, a former officer with the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office, was arrested and charged with burglarizing the vehicle of a man he had arrested for drunk driving. Brer had been fired from the sheriff's office on November 24, shortly before his arrest. Authorities believed he was involved in other vehicle burglaries as well. Block had been involved in a car accident on August 2, 2007, and Brer responded to the scene. While Block was hospitalized for minor injuries, someone used his credit card to purchase a GPS device. When authorities searched Hebert's home and vehicle after his arrest, they discovered the stolen GPS system, as well as Block's driver's license, credit card, and blank checks. In April 2013, Brer faced federal charges, including civil rights violations, bank fraud, obstruction of justice, aggravated identity theft, and computer fraud. The indictment alleged that Brer stole Block's personal information, used his ATM card and checks to steal money from his bank accounts while Block was still in the hospital, and ultimately killed him to prevent him from reporting the thefts. However, Brer has not been charged with Block's murder and maintains his innocence regarding Block's disappearance. In November 2013, Brer pleaded guilty to 7 felony counts, including bank fraud, identity theft, and civil rights violations, as part of a plea deal with prosecutors. He was sentenced to 92 years in prison in November 2014. The judge expressed her belief that Brer was responsible for Block's death during the sentencing. Block left behind a significant bank account, all of his furniture, and his vehicle. Since his disappearance, he has not cashed any of his benefit checks or refilled his prescriptions. Foul play is suspected in his case due to the circumstances surrounding his disappearance. On July 5, 2011, Sylvan Fink-Lozada was last seen in East Baton Rouge Parish, Louisiana. She had regular communication with her relatives in Belgium but suddenly stopped contacting them. Since that day, Sylvan has not been seen or heard from. At the time of her disappearance, Sylvan was living with her husband, Oscar A. Lozada, and their young daughter on Spring Lake Drive off Bluebonnet Boulevard. Their marriage was tumultuous, marked by incidents of violence. In December 2010, Sylvan called the police to report that Oscar had thrown objects at her during an argument. She also confided in hospital nurses that her husband had pushed her when she sought treatment that month. Sylvan chose not to file complaints in either case due to fear that Oscar would take their child and flee the country. On July 9, 2011, 4 days after Sylvan vanished, Oscar and their daughter boarded a flight from Baton Rouge to Dallas, Texas, and from there they traveled to Venezuela. They were scheduled to depart again on July 14, but never did. Oscar informed authorities that he had medical reasons for his stay in Venezuela and stated that he and their child had no plans to return to the United States. He even requested a family member to sell his yellow 2001 Nissan Xterra and send him the proceeds. While Sylvian's passport and bank card were not used following her disappearance, Oscar told detectives that he believed she had left him for another man living in Colombia. However, investigators discovered that Oscar had made unaccounted-for purchases of 15 bags of concrete mix and 9 5-gallon buckets on the day Sylvan vanished. In September 2018, Oscar was arrested in Mexico and charged with Sylvan's murder. He had moved there with their daughter after Sylvan went missing. Police reported finding Sylvan's blood in 9 different locations in the garage. Oscar is currently awaiting trial. Before her disappearance, Sylvan had been a dedicated teacher for 13 years, teaching French and Spanish at Breslee High School in Breslee, Louisiana. She held a Ph.D. and was a nationally board-certified teacher. Her case remains open, and efforts continue to seek justice and uncover the truth surrounding her disappearance. Constance Anderson, a resident of Mansfield, Louisiana, was last seen at her home in the area of the 400 block of Albert Lewis Way on the evening of January 24, 2006. Sometime between 10:30 and 11 p.m., she received a phone call from an unidentified person and abruptly left her residence. Around 1:30 a.m. the following morning, Constance sent a text message to a friend, informing them that she was heading to their house in a nearby housing project, approximately 1.5 miles away. However, she never arrived at her friend's house and has not been seen or heard from since. Considering it was a cold night and Constance was feeling unwell, likely due to her pregnancy, her family doubts that she would have attempted to walk the entire distance to her friend's house. According to her family, she had a tendency to accept rides from strangers, and it is possible that she did so on the night she disappeared. Constance's family strongly believes that she did not leave voluntarily. Although she had left home before, she had always maintained regular communication with her family to update them on her whereabouts. Interestingly, she only took her phone with her, leaving behind her wallet, jacket, clothing items, medication, and identification. Despite Constance's criminal history and several active arrest warrants, it is not believed that she was evading the authorities. Both investigators and her family suspect foul play in her sudden and unexplained absence, suggesting that she may have met with a tragic end. Constance Anderson has 7 siblings, and tragically, she left behind a 3-year-old child who is now under the custody of his father. Her case remains open, and efforts to uncover the truth surrounding her disappearance continue. On December 23, 1990, John Bayham was last seen in Oakdale, Louisiana. He was on his way to meet a friend at a local car wash. Around 7:30 p.m., he stopped at the Bayou store on his route. Despite the car wash being just a short walk away, John never arrived there and has been missing ever since. A witness reported seeing his pickup truck around 9:30 p.m. on Highway 10 west of Oakdale, near the Calcasieu River Bridge. When the witness passed by, the truck's lights were on, but they soon turned off. The next morning, John's father discovered his son's vehicle parked on a gravel road beneath the bridge. Inside the truck, John's coat and shotgun were found, the battery was dead, and the keys were in the on position. However, there was no sign of a struggle or any other clues as to what might have happened to him. It is worth noting that John had been drinking the night before he vanished and was carrying $1,500 in cash after cashing a check. When John's father found the truck, he also noticed that Oakdale resident Paul A. Kilgore and another man were asleep in a nearby vehicle. Both individuals were questioned by the police, but claimed not to have seen or heard anything related to John's disappearance. Kilgore later relocated to Michigan. In 1998, a prisoner accused him of killing John. This prisoner, who was only 13 years old at the time of the abduction, went to the authorities because his conscience was troubling him. The prisoner led the police to an area known as Dead Man's Lake, stating that John's body was buried there. However, despite extensive searches conducted by authorities, nothing was found. According to the prisoner's information, Kilgore was arrested in Michigan in July of that year on charges of first-degree murder and first-degree robbery related to John's case. However, a jury ultimately determined that there was insufficient evidence to prosecute him, resulting in his release. John Bayham attended Oakdale High School, graduating in 1987. At the time of his disappearance, he was working in Texas but had returned to Louisiana to spend the Christmas season with his family. Considering that the temperature on the night he vanished was only 17 degrees, his loved ones do not believe he would have willingly left. Additionally, he had emptied his bank account of approximately $4,000. The case of John Bayham remains open. In the late summer of 1912, Percy and Leslie Dunbar took their beloved son, Robert Clarence Dunbar, affectionately known as Bobby, on a fishing trip to Swayze Lake near Opelousas, Louisiana. Little did they know that this excursion would forever alter the course of their family's history. Tragically, Bobby vanished without a trace, leaving his distraught parents and a community in shock. The Dunbars launched an exhaustive search, spanning across the country, in a desperate attempt to find their missing son. Fearing the worst, they offered a substantial reward of $6,000 for Bobby's safe return, no questions asked. Postcards featuring Bobby's image and detailed descriptions were circulated far and wide. They described him as having large round blue eyes, light hair transitioning to a darker shade, a fair complexion with rosy cheeks, and distinct burn scars on his left foot's big toe from infancy. After months of anguish and uncertainty, a breakthrough occurred. Authorities received information that a child resembling Bobby had been found safe and well in Mississippi. The child was in the company of William Cantwell Walters, a piano and organ tuner. Walters claimed that the child, Charles Bruce Anderson, was the son of his brother and Julia Anderson, the Dunbars' former housekeeper. According to Walters, Julia had entrusted him with temporary custody while she visited her family in Mississippi. Although Walters insisted on his innocence, he was apprehended and brought to Opelousas to face charges of abduction, a crime punishable by death in Louisiana. The Dunbars, informed of the developments, wasted no time and hurried to Mississippi in hopes of reuniting with their long-lost son. However, what awaited them was a reunion mired in uncertainty and doubt. Multiple accounts suggest that initially, the Dunbars had reservations about the child presented to them. Leslie, upon seeing him, reportedly responded with uncertainty, stating, "I don't know." The child allegedly burst into tears and appeared frightened in the presence of the Dunbars. Furthermore, when he later encountered his younger brother Alonzo Dunbar, there was no sign of recognition or surprise between the two children. Nevertheless, Leslie proceeded to bathe the child the following day. Despite failing to notice the missing burn on his foot, she claimed to recognize his moles and scars, and remained convinced that he was their son. On April 25, 1913, the Dunbars triumphantly returned the child to Opelousas, where a grand homecoming celebration awaited Bobby with a procession, brass bands, and a joyous reception in the courthouse square. On May 1, Julia Anderson arrived in Louisiana, having made arrangements with a New Orleans newspaper to support Walter's version of events and testify to his innocence. Julia, too, struggled to recognize the child as her son Bruce, just as the Dunbars had. However, the child appeared distant and detached from her in the lavish surroundings of a large home filled with toys and a pony. The following day, Julia was finally granted the opportunity to undress the child, much like Leslie Dunbar had done before her. Upon closer inspection, Julia confidently declared that he was her son Bruce and attempted to take him with her. However, her statements were largely dismissed, partly due to her prior absence when she missed the child. Moreover, the media questioned her moral character as an unmarried mother in the early 20th century, leading to skepticism from the public. In the ensuing custody battle, a disheartened Julia returned to North Carolina, unable to afford legal representation for the child. However, she made a second journey to Louisiana, accompanied by residents of Poplarville, Mississippi, who claimed to be Walter's friends and testified that they had seen the child in Mississippi before Bobby's disappearance, thus challenging his identity as the Dunbar's son. Despite their testimonies, the court ultimately ruled in favor of Leslie and Percy Dunbar. From that moment on, the Mississippi child became officially recognized as Robert Clarence Dunbar and went on to live a full life as a member of the Dunbar family. The fate of William Walters, the man initially convicted of kidnapping Bobby Dunbar, took a dramatic turn after a 2-week trial. Despite being spared the death penalty, Walters received a life sentence. However, his conviction was later overturned, granting him a fresh trial that ultimately led to his release in 1915. Walters spent the remainder of his life maintaining his innocence but faced ongoing scrutiny from the public. He passed away on April 7, 1945, due to blood poisoning. Julia Anderson, the birth mother of the child known as Bruce Anderson, faced her own challenges. She eventually settled in North Carolina, married, and had 7 children. Throughout her life, Julia maintained that the Dunbars were shameless kidnappers and often spoke of her son Bruce. Her solace came from knowing that the child, whom she fiercely believed was her son, had been adopted by a wealthy family. Although Julia never saw the child again, her love and conviction remained unwavering. As for Bobby Dunbar, his life continued as he matured into adulthood, married a woman named Marjorie Byers, and had 4 children. Despite the revelations and uncertainties surrounding his true identity, he lived a happy and fulfilling life. In a generational pursuit of truth, Margaret Dunbar Cutright, the granddaughter of Bobby Dunbar, embarked on a 4-year investigation. Alongside Linda Travers, one of Julia Anderson's daughters, they discovered an anonymous letter signed by the Christian woman. The letter questioned the circumstances surrounding Bobby's case and supported Walters and Anderson, suggesting that the child found in Mississippi might be Bruce Anderson instead. Motivated by the letter, Margaret sought to uncover the truth and requested a DNA sample from her father, Bob Dunbar, Jr., in 2003. The test, comparing the samples of Bob Dunbar, Jr. and Alonzo Dunbar's child, revealed that they were not first-degree relatives. This outcome suggested that the child discovered in Mississippi in 1913 had no biological connection to the Dunbars. The revelation had a profound impact on the entire Dunbar family. They had to come to terms with the fact that their ancestry was built on a significant mistake. The true fate of Bobby Dunbar remains a mystery, with theories ranging from accidental drowning to intentional disappearance. The question of the child's awareness and understanding of his identity and situation continues to intrigue. Bobby Dunbar, Jr. remembered a conversation with his father in 1954, where his father provided an evasive response, suggesting that knowing who they were was all that mattered. On March 8, 1966, at the age of 57, Robert Clarence Dunbar, the man known as Bobby Dunbar, passed away from heart illness in Houston. His final resting place is Bellevue Memorial Cemetery in Opelousas, Louisiana, where he lies next to his wife. The story of Bobby Dunbar remains a complex and enigmatic chapter in history, provoking questions about identity, truth, and the enduring impact of a long-standing mystery. In a chilling tale that continues to baffle investigators, Stephen Bovard, a resident of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, vanished without a trace after a fateful encounter on January 31, 1983. The enigma begins at the residence of Bobby Joe Ferguson, a man hailing from Zachary, Louisiana, whose home became the last known location of the missing Bovard. Days turned into an agonizing wait for Bovard's concerned parents, residing in the serene 17,000 block of South Harrell's Ferry Road. Distressed by their son's prolonged absence, they reported him missing, setting off a chain of events that would shroud this case in darkness forever. However, hope gradually gave way to despair when no word was ever heard from Bovard again. The grim puzzle deepened on February 3rd, as authorities stumbled upon his torched and abandoned truck in the desolate Tunica Hills, northwest of St. Francisville, Louisiana. Unveiling a twist in the tale, it emerged that Bovard had been arrested merely a week prior on drug charges that could have landed him a decade-long prison sentence. Seizing a staggering cache of contraband, the police discovered 12 grams of cocaine, 53 Quaalude tablets, 1.5 pounds of marijuana, a .357 Magnum pistol, and a substantial sum of $5,000 in cash. The stakes were high, and cooperation with the investigation was Bovard's sole chance for leniency. As the investigation unfolded, a haunting theory took shape: Stephen Bovard had met a tragic end. Investigators wasted no time in issuing a warrant for the arrest of Bobby Joe Ferguson, charging him with second-degree murder. Yet, Ferguson cunningly eluded the grasp of justice by fleeing, leaving behind a haunting image that is posted alongside this perplexing case. But Ferguson was not the sole suspect in this macabre tale. Enter Morris Ronald Allen, another individual who found himself embroiled in the web of suspicion. In March 1983, Allen faced charges as an accessory to second-degree murder after the fact, igniting intrigue around his role in Beauvard's disappearance. The puzzle pieces began to align when Allen disclosed a shocking detail to investigators. He confessed that on February 4th, he had assisted Ferguson in disposing of a chilling package, a body wrapped in a carpet, weighed down by 2 tire rims, callously dumped into the murky depths of the Atchafalaya River, near Highway 190, in Krotz Springs. Although Allen did not witness the victim's identity, an unmistakable human arm glimpsed through the grim shroud confirmed the presence of a life extinguished. Determined to unravel the truth, authorities scoured the Atchafalaya River with sonar technology. Their efforts bore eerie fruit as they detected an object submerged beneath the watery abyss, strongly suggestive of a lifeless body. Tragically, perilous conditions thwarted the recovery efforts, leaving the truth concealed beneath the river's dark veil. With mounting suspicion surrounding Ferguson's involvement, investigators ventured into his abode, uncovering a scene that would forever haunt their memories. Bloodstains marred the walls and ceiling, while a telltale section of carpet had been cruelly excised, adding another layer of sinister intrigue to this perplexing crime. Stephen Beauvard, an industrious mechanic employed at Odom Offshore Surveys, seemingly fell victim to a chilling fate, his presence forever erased from the lives he once touched. The resolution of this murder case remains unknown, but the circumstances enveloping Beauvard's disappearance paint a grim portrait of foul. Lurleen DeWitt, a resident of Mansfield, Louisiana, lived with her son on Oxford Road in 1996. On the evening of September 27th, her son last saw her around 9 p.m. as she slept on a couch in the front room. However, when he woke up at 1 a.m. the next morning, he made a distressing discovery: the carport door was open, and his mother was nowhere to be found. To this day, there have been no signs of her, and she has not been heard from since. Strikingly, none of her personal belongings or identification were taken when she vanished. Initially, authorities believed that DeWitt may have left her residence during a heavy thunderstorm on the evening of her disappearance. They questioned a man living nearby as a possible suspect, but he was eventually cleared of any involvement in the case. Furthermore, all of DeWitt's family members have been ruled out as potential suspects. In light of the evidence, investigators have since shifted their focus and now believe that DeWitt may have willingly opened the door to her home on the night she vanished, granting access to an unidentified assailant or assailants. The prevailing theory is that she may have been targeted by individuals who prey on the elderly, assuming she possessed a significant amount of cash. Foul play is strongly suspected, and her case remains unsolved. The disappearance of Lurleen DeWitt continues to be a haunting mystery, leaving her family and investigators grappling with unanswered questions. The search for answers and justice persists, as they seek to bring closure to this perplexing and unresolved case. On September 16, 2018, Zachary Berkey went missing from New Orleans, Louisiana. He was last seen leaving his mother's residence on Camp Street at 7 p.m., riding his mountain bike. Tragically, Zachary vanished without a trace, and his distinctive black bicycle with thick rims remains missing. A photo of a similar bike has been provided to aid in the search for him. During the investigation into his disappearance, it was discovered that Demetrius Williams had used Zachary's debit card at a Rite Aid pharmacy on the same night he went missing. Williams, who was homeless at the time, faced multiple charges of access device fraud. When questioned about Zachary's whereabouts, Williams claimed that they had been together near Cooter Brown's Tavern and Oyster Bar in the Riverbend area. They had consumed alcohol and discussed narcotics. According to Williams, they were walking down South Carrollton Avenue with 2 other individuals known as Buff and Slim Shady. At some point, Williams parted ways with Zachary, leaving him in the company of Slim Shady and Buff. Unfortunately, Williams had no further information regarding Zachary's whereabouts. Surveillance footage from that night confirmed that Zachary was indeed at Cooter Brown's Tavern. He was captured on camera withdrawing $80 from an ATM at 8:25 p.m. At the time, he appeared calm and relaxed. Zachary's mother noted that it was not out of character for him to engage in conversations with strangers. Zachary was employed as a lifeguard with the New Orleans Recreation Development Commission at the time of his disappearance. Despite extensive investigations, no suspects have been identified in relation to his case, and his disappearance remains unsolved. The search for answers continues as loved ones and law enforcement hope for a breakthrough in finding Zachary Berkey and bringing closure to his family. In June 1996, Anthony Cavett was reported missing by his mail carrier, who had not seen him since early that month. His reclusive lifestyle meant that the mail carrier was the only person he regularly interacted with, making his disappearance particularly concerning. Notably, Cavett's truck, which he had purchased just 3 months prior to his disappearance, was also missing and has never been located. There are no records indicating that he sold the vehicle. The truck is described as a beige 1985 Ford pickup with dual rear wheels and a louvered steel protector over the back window, featuring 3 holes for visibility. Its license plate number is B340220. Cavett's family emphasizes that it was highly uncharacteristic of him to leave without warning. He had a deep bond with his pets, including dogs, goats, and cats, and was known for taking good care of them. However, when he vanished, the animals were left unattended and deprived of food and water, ultimately being handed over to the County Animal Control Center. Despite thorough searches of Cavett's 40-acre property, investigators have found no evidence of foul play or any indications that he met with harm at his residence. Cavett had worked as a railroad bridge tender on the Intracoastal Waterway for over 3 decades, retiring in the early 1980s. He never married, adding another layer of mystery to his disappearance. The circumstances surrounding Anthony Cavett's vanishing remain unsolved. On March 2, 1978, a tragedy struck the small town of Morgan City, Louisiana, when Mary Rodermund, a high school sophomore, went missing. Mary was last seen leaving for a drugstore on Victor II Boulevard and was never seen again. Her car was later found abandoned in the drugstore's parking lot. In a chilling twist, her parents received a ransom call demanding $5,000 for her return, and Mary briefly spoke on the phone to assure them she was okay. However, the ransom caller provided no instructions on where to send the money, and that was the last time anyone heard from her. Mary was a lively young girl attending Morgan City High School. Described as an average student, she had a penchant for spending time with her boyfriend, dancing, and listening to music. She had recently quit her job as a department store cashier and had aspirations to attend college and become a psychiatrist. Being the youngest of 6 siblings, her disappearance left a void in her family. Authorities believe that Mary fell victim to Robert Carl Hohenberger, a serial killer originally from California. Hohenberger was a former deputy sheriff who had a terrifying track record. Before coming to Louisiana, he had kidnapped and raped 4 women in California. After escaping jail in California, he made his way to Louisiana where he lived under a false identity. Investigators suspect that Hohenberger used his police badge to lure victims before killing them. It is believed that he may have killed up to 7 people within a span of 3 months before his own death in June 1978. When authorities cornered him and tried to capture him, he took his own life. As of today, Mary Rodermund's remains have never been found, and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance remain shrouded in mystery. She and another woman, Bertha Gould, who disappeared in May 1978, are the only victims of Hohenberger whose bodies have not been recovered. Bruce Cucchiaro was a man who was treasured by his community as a grandfather, father, and husband. His love for sports, especially baseball, translated into a devotion to coaching basketball and baseball in his neighborhood. Bruce attended St. Paul's School from 1968 to 1972 and remained an actively involved alumnus. He obtained a bachelor's degree from Southeastern Louisiana University. Christmas was his favorite time of the year. Bruce started his career in finance and played significant roles in his community, including serving as the founding president of Resource Bank in St. Tammany Parish and the chief financial officer of Seco real estate development firm. He had recently remarried before his tragic death. On the morning of April 24, 2012, Bruce Kukiara's day started as usual. He received a call regarding an investment property in Lafayette, Louisiana. He had met with the caller the previous day, and the call, lasting about 4 minutes, was to ask for an update. Bruce was already at work by 8 a.m., having responded to an email from his son. At around 9:10 a.m., Bruce had another brief phone conversation which lasted just under 2 minutes. Another call was made to a business colleague at 9:32 a.m. Based on the short duration and the pings from cell towers, it is believed that Bruce was en route to an apartment complex. At 9:53 a.m., Bruce called a colleague, Glenn Angus, and their conversation lasted for 12 minutes. Bruce was believed to be at the Mark 7 apartment building at this time. He made an attempt to call Glenn back but received no answer. Bruce was trying to visit a rental property but realized he had been given the wrong address. In an attempt to clarify the location, he went to speak with the apartment complex's management. No one knew that Bruce was going to be at this location. At 10:14 a.m., Bruce was fatally shot by a handgun as he was returning to his car. There were no casings found at the scene and no surveillance footage. Police arrived at the parking lot of the Mark 7 apartment complex shortly thereafter. Subsequently, it was found that Bruce's wallet and phone were missing. An hour and a half after the shooting, Bruce received an email alert stating that someone had tried to access his Apple ID account and requested a password reset. The motive behind this remains unclear. Bruce's phone was eventually recovered after the police conducted an extensive search for over a month. A sketch of the suspect was released 2 days later. He was described as a slim individual in his mid-20s, between 5 feet 9 inches and 6 feet tall, with a clean-shaven face and a possibly light brown complexion. He was wearing a thick, hooded black jacket, a black knit hat, black jeans, and black shoes. There were a total of 5 insurance policies taken out on Bruce, totaling $5 million, beginning in 2007. The case remains unsolved, but Bruce's family continues to fight for justice. In 2021, the New Orleans Police Department announced that they would like to interview Richard Chambers and Joyce Whitfield, as they may have information that could help the investigation. The case was also covered in Season 5 of the Counterclock podcast in 2023. To be eligible for a reward, anyone with information is encouraged to send an email with their details to justicefordbruce@gmail.com and submit an anonymous tip, or contact Detective O'Coing by phone at 658-5300. On August 27, 2006, Jeanette Watson left her home in Newton County, Texas, intending to visit a friend's house in Tenaha, Texas. However, she never arrived. The next day, on August 28, she was last seen at a truck stop in Logansport, Louisiana, playing slots. This behavior struck Watson's family as odd, as they said she wasn't known to gamble and often spoke against it. However, employees at the truck stop stated that she was a regular there. On the night before she disappeared, she reportedly won around $1,000. Jeanette Watson has not been seen or heard from since that night. Several hours after she was last seen, at around 11 p.m. on August 28, Watson's white Ford Explorer Sport Track was found about 75 yards off Highway 191 North, near Zwolle, Louisiana. This location is situated between Logansport and Newton County. The vehicle had been intentionally set on fire, and it was still ablaze when it was discovered. The fire completely destroyed everything inside the vehicle. Adding to the mystery, Watson's cell phone was found a few miles away from the vehicle, under a bridge. However, there was no trace of Watson herself. A month after her disappearance, authorities announced that they were looking for a male person of interest in connection with Watson's case. The man, whose identity has not been disclosed, was present at the truck stop on the night Watson disappeared. Watson's disappearance is surrounded by uncertain circumstances and is being investigated as a missing person case, rather than a crime. Her family and friends are left with unanswered questions and a deep concern for her safety and whereabouts. Livingston Parish, Louisiana. On a seemingly ordinary morning, May 2, 2008, the quiet rural life of Livingston Parish was disrupted as one of its beloved residents mysteriously vanished without a trace. Barbara Blunt, a 58-year-old widow known for her active involvement in the local Baptist church and her close-knit family ties, was last heard from at 11:30 a.m. during a phone call with a neighbor. She mentioned that she was in the midst of cleaning her kitchen cabinets. Sadly, that was the last anyone would ever hear from her. Barbara's house, located in a serene area on State Highway 1036, was later checked by her worried nephew. The sight that greeted him was both baffling and alarming. The front door stood agape, windows were open, and Barbara's phone lay on the floor with its battery removed. A disarray of pots was haphazardly stacked on the kitchen floor, and surprisingly, valuables were left in plain sight. Nothing seemed to indicate that robbery was a motive. Barbara's silver four-door 2006 Toyota Camry was discovered abandoned on a dirt logging road, about a quarter-mile from her home. The vehicle was discreetly nestled 25 to 30 yards off the main road, concealed by trees on a hunting club property. The car's interior was wet, possibly from the heavy rain that had poured down earlier. Adding to the peculiarity, the car keys were found half buried in gravel approximately 20 yards from the car. A witness came forward and reported having seen a woman, who bore a striking resemblance to Barbara, standing beside the car on that day. She was dressed in a tank top, pinstriped shorts, and purple Crocs. Another figure, a Caucasian man, was reportedly standing near her, and a late-model white pickup truck was parked close by. What was most unsettling was the expression of sheer terror on the woman's face, which prompted the witness to contact Crime Stoppers. Barbara, a cautious soul who valued her privacy and safety, lived alone. However, her solitary life didn't keep her detached from her loved ones. She maintained regular communication with her relatives, two of whom lived on the same road. Barbara was known to cook dinners for her children and even took the time to drive her sister to medical appointments. Her lifestyle was peaceful and centered around her faith and family. It is highly uncharacteristic of her to leave without any communication. Barbara's vigilant nature extended to her personal safety. She was known not to open her door to strangers and was often armed when venturing outside to milk cows. Her credit cards remained untouched since her disappearance, further cementing the belief that her disappearance was not voluntary. There are whispers and conjecture that Barbara's disappearance might be connected to a tragic incident that occurred almost 4 years prior. In June 2004, Barbara's husband, 55-year-old Henry Ewell Jr. Blount Jr., met a tragic end when his gasoline tanker truck was struck by a train. The accident also claimed the lives of 2 railroad employees. Union members alleged that Jr. was to blame and referred to the event as a murder. The cloud of mysteries surrounding Barbara's vanishing raises questions as to whether her husband's fatal accident had any role in it. Investigators strongly suspect foul play in Barbara's disappearance but are faced with a paucity of evidence. Her case is still open, and her loved ones are left yearning for answers. Anyone with information regarding Barbara Blunt's disappearance is urged to contact the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office. Caption: Barbara Blunt, whose mysterious disappearance from Livingston Parish in 2008 remains unsolved. Port Allen, Louisiana, a small, sleepy town nestled along the Mississippi River. But on the evening of Christmas Eve 2002, a sinister chill cast a shadow over the holiday spirit that usually enveloped the town. This is the story of Mari Fowler, whose vanishing still haunts the soul of Port Allen. Mari Fowler was in the spirit of giving as she cradled her warm Subway sandwich, ready to embrace the festive holiday. The strip mall on Louisiana Highway 415 was abuzz with last-minute shoppers. Little did anyone know that the fabric of this close-knit community was about to be torn apart. Mari was last seen around 5:30 p.m., her presence caught on the whispering lens of a security camera. She stood, perhaps contemplating the journey she was about to make to visit her incarcerated husband, Jerry Fowler, in a Texas federal prison. In a nightmarish twist, Mari's possessions were later found scattered on the street, part of her acrylic fingernails possibly torn off in a struggle. Wrapped Christmas Presents lay untouched in her car, a poignant reminder of a journey interrupted. What could have been the motive? Robbery was quickly ruled out. The security camera that last glimpsed Mari also captured a ghostly image, a General Motors pickup truck that seemed to tear away from the subway. Like a specter, it could have been the steed that carried Mari away. Tire marks, like cryptic runes, lay scattered across the parking area. The kidnapper too was caught on tape, yet shrouded in mystery. The grainy footage whispered secrets but revealed no face. Who was this phantom that had snatched Mari away? As the investigation unfurled, the dark tapestry of Derek Todd Lee emerged. An alleged serial killer, shadowing Baton Rouge, Lee was accused of a string of heinous crimes. The whisper of phone records placed him hauntingly close to Mari that fateful evening. A vehicle resembling his was the spectral figure caught on camera. Was Lee the phantom that spirited Mari away? Despite the haunting threads, no concrete DNA link could bind Lee to Mari's disappearance. The chilling puzzle remained incomplete. Mari Fowler never returned to Port Allen. In May 2004, she was declared legally dead. The community was draped in mourning, the tendrils of loss creeping into every home. Her enigmatic disappearance remained shrouded in shadows. To this day, Mari Fowler's abduction remains a wound in the heart of Port Allen. A wife and mother, she was wrenched away on the eve of a holiday that sings of love and togetherness. Was Derek Todd Lee the shadow that snatched her away, or is there another phantom still haunting the bayous? Her case remains unsolved. On the fateful day of January 29, 1979, Louis Boggs Sr. was last seen at his bar, Lewis's Lounge, located on the 17300 block of Florida Boulevard. During his time at the bar, he received a phone call, engaged in a brief conversation, and then abruptly left the premises, stating that he needed to run an errand. He drove off in his 1975 Ford LTD, which bore the license plate number 203A255. Notably, he left behind a bank bag containing the night's earnings and his .357 Magnum revolver at the lounge. Since that day, Louis Boggs Sr. has vanished without a trace. In a sinister twist, bloodstains were discovered at Boggs' residence in the 5700 block of Glen Oaks after his disappearance. Clifford Earl Lewin, Boggs' stepson, was found 2 weeks later, asleep in Boggs' Ford LTD, in a wooded area near Chipley, Florida. Interestingly, Boggs and Lewin shared a residence along with Lewin's sister at the time of the incident. Lewin claimed that Boggs had lent him the car. However, Boggs' son refuted this claim, stating that his father would never have done so. The car's trunk contained ominous items, a shovel and a knife caked with mud, along with clothes and papers soaked in human blood. The trunk liner also bore bloodstains. Even though DNA testing was not available in 1979, an investigation established that the blood found both in Boggs' home and in the trunk was type B, which matched Boggs' blood type. Further, the soil on the shovel was found to be similar to that found near the Mississippi River. Disturbingly, it emerged that Lewin had allegedly expressed to others his sinister intentions to poison Boggs' meals and murder him before he went missing. In 1978, Boggs had Lewin committed to a mental institution, which fueled Lewin's rage. He chillingly vowed that if he were ever to kill himself, his body would be found in the river. Reportedly, when pressed by a police officer to disclose the location of Boggs' body, Lewin retorted, "You don't have to worry, it's not in your county." This grim case led to Clifford Earl Lewin being indicted for first-degree murder in connection to Boggs' disappearance. However, on the eve of the trial, he changed his plea from not guilty by reason of insanity to a simple not guilty plea. In an unexpected turn during his non-jury trial in 1981, Lewin was acquitted. He later received a 50-year prison sentence for an unrelated crime, where he was convicted for planting a pipe bomb that detonated and left a Florida police officer with debilitating injuries. Louis Boggs Sr., who had worked in construction before retiring, never reappeared, and his case remains shrouded in mystery. On January 27, 1999, Corey Rubio's sudden disappearance left her family and community in Shreveport, Louisiana, in a state of anguish and confusion. Earlier that day, Corey had spoken to her mother, saying she would be picking up her two daughters from their babysitter's house and heading over to her mother's place. However, she never made it to the babysitter's and has not been seen or heard from since. Earlier on the day of her disappearance, Corey spent some time at Barksdale Air Force Base in Bossier City, Louisiana, where she was discussing a child support hearing with her ex-husband, Jesse McGay. McGay, who was a senior airman in the United States Air Force at the time, was involved in both a child support dispute and a custody battle with Corey. The hearing was scheduled for the following day, and McGay sought to have the child support he was paying for their 2-year-old daughter reduced. Security records at the Air Force Base confirmed that Corey did enter the base on January 27. However, no records are kept for departing visitors, leaving it uncertain whether she left the base. Corey's family insisted that it was highly uncharacteristic of her to leave without informing them. In a troubling development, Corey's white 1994 Ford Probe was discovered abandoned near the Stoner Avenue boat launch on the Red River in Shreveport, which is located just across the river from the base. The car was vandalized and Corey was nowhere to be found, but her purse and shoes were still inside the vehicle. In a bizarre twist, shortly after Corey's disappearance, McGay was transferred to Osan Air Force Base in Korea, but he deserted and returned to the United States. In a letter, he cited unfinished business and dissatisfaction with his life as the reasons for his desertion. McGay was eventually found in Dallas, Texas in November 1999, 10 months after Corey's disappearance. He reportedly had a history of violent behavior towards Corey and others. However, he has never been charged in connection with her disappearance. Corey's parents sought and were granted custody of Corey and McGay's daughter after he failed to appear at a hearing. He was subsequently ordered to pay child support to them. In March 2001, authorities conducted a 3-day search for Corey's remains near the boat ramp in Shreveport. While the search did not yield immediate results, investigators believed they found an area of interest. Due to circumstances at the time, they were not able to continue the excavation. As of now, Corey Rubio's case remains open and unresolved. Authorities suspect foul play in her disappearance. While McGay is considered a person of interest due to his history of violence, no concrete evidence has linked him to the case. Tracy Winslow disappeared on January 23, 2011, in Oil City, Louisiana. She had gone out with friends the night before but returned to Oil City around midnight. Around the same time, her ex-boyfriend called her on the phone. Witnesses reported seeing her talking outside of her apartment on the 100 block of North Dickey Street, which she shared with her mother. They then heard a car speeding away. Winslow has not been seen or heard from since that night. At about 2:30 a.m., her silver 2006 Dodge Charger was found abandoned and burned on the side of the road near North Lakeshore and Coons Road. The car was completely destroyed by the fire. A few days after her disappearance, Eddie Lee Biscuit Jackson was arrested and charged with second-degree kidnapping and arson in connection with Winslow's case. He is the father of her 3 children, and they had lived together for 15 years before ending their relationship 2 months prior to her disappearance. Authorities believe that Jackson abducted Winslow outside her apartment, set her car on fire, and then fled. Cell phone records indicated that Jackson was in the vicinity of where the car was set on fire. During his trial in the summer of 2012, 2 of Winslow and Jackson's older children testified against him. They revealed that the couple's breakup was precipitated by an incident where the children witnessed Jackson assaulting their mother with a gun and threatening to kill her. A member of Winslow's family testified that Winslow had bought a gun for her protection after receiving threatening text messages from Jackson. Jackson maintained his innocence throughout the trial, but in August 2012, he was convicted on all charges. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before reaching a verdict. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Tracy Winslow's body has never been found, but due to the circumstances surrounding her disappearance, foul play is suspected. On the night of July 12, 1964, just as the clock ticked around midnight, Joseph Edwards, a dapper handyman and porter at the Shamrock Motel in Vidalia, Louisiana, was seen exiting the motel premises. That would be the last time anyone saw or heard from him. A haunting discovery was made a few days later when Edwards' 1958 Buick, with its distinctive two-tone blue and beige paint, was found abandoned near a bowling alley on the Faraday-Vidalia Highway. The car's interior was in disarray, a suspicious stain that could have been blood was spotted on the floor, muck was scattered, and a necktie with a noose knot hung ominously from the steering wheel. Strangely, a belt that did not belong to Edwards was found on the seat. Kenneth Stevenson, the owner of the nearby bowling alley, would later share a chilling account. He mentioned that while driving to Faraday, he saw a white Oldsmobile pulling over a car resembling Edwards'. Although it was not marked, the Oldsmobile was believed to be an undercover Vidalia police car. Stevenson described the driver of the Oldsmobile as an overweight, large white male. He also noticed two other white males standing by the Buick's open driver's side door. The Shamrock Motel, where Edwards was employed, had a notorious reputation as a hotspot for the Ku Klux Klan. The Klan, during the 1960s, was known for committing acts of violence, including murders, against African Americans in the area. It was around this time that whispers about Edwards engaging in relationships with white women began to circulate. Additionally, there were accusations that he was acting as a pimp, connecting white prostitutes with white male customers at the motel. These alleged activities may have made him a target for the Klan's brutal violence. 7 individuals, all now deceased, have been identified as potential suspects in Edwards' disappearance. These men: Raleigh Jackson Red Glover, Kenneth Norman Head, Homer James Buck Horton, Frank DeLauder, Bill Ogden, James Buford Goss, and Vidalia Police Chief J. L. Bud Spinks were all connected to the Ku Klux Klan. Some were also associated with the Silver Dollar Group, a more violent offshoot of the Klan. A crucial twist in the story came from Iona Perry, a white woman who worked at the Shamrock Motel. Perry, who used crutches due to polio, was involved with James Buford Goss. She claimed that a few days before Edwards' disappearance, he attempted to kiss her. When she informed Goss, he was livid and sought retribution. The following day, Goss told Police Chief Spinks about the incident and demanded action. Spinks assured him that it would be taken care of. In 1967, the FBI launched an investigation into Edwards' case. Around this time, a fisherman made a grim find in Deer Park Lake, which used to be the main channel of the Mississippi River. The fisherman found what seemed to be human flesh in his net. This led to rumors that Edwards was brutally killed by Klan members, discarding his body into the river. However, this could not be definitively confirmed. Goss, during an FBI interview in 1967, made mention of this discovery. He recounted that when he asked Ogden about it, Ogden chillingly advised him to dispose of victims far from fishing grounds and implicated Goss in Edwards' death. Furthermore, another witness account linked Ogden and DeLauder to Edwards' disappearance. The witness claimed that the two officers apprehended Edwards near the bowling alley, and as DeLauder chased him on foot toward the Mississippi River levee, they might have gone too far while trying to whip Edwards, resulting in his death. Despite the investigative efforts, no one was ever prosecuted in connection to Joseph Edwards' disappearance. As of 2004, all the suspects named in the case have passed away. At the time of his disappearance, Edwards was engaged and was living with his grandparents. He was known as a stylish dresser who enjoyed gambling and was popular with the ladies. His 11 siblings and the rest of his family still yearn for answers and closure regarding his disappearance. Joseph Edwards' case remains an unresolved, haunting reminder of the turbulent racial violence that marred the 1960s in the American South. On the night of March 30, 1983, a young mother named Faye Self decided to take a break from her responsibilities and enjoy an evening out with friends at the Wagon Wheel Bar and Restaurant on Highway 1 in Armistead, Louisiana. Before heading out, she left her infant daughter in the care of her mother. While at the bar, Faye told her friends that she planned to leave early in order to pick up her daughter, as she had work the following morning. However, Faye never arrived at her mother's house to collect her daughter, and her absence immediately raised concerns among her family. The next day, her car was found in the parking lot of the Wagon Wheel Bar and Restaurant. The doors were locked, the steering wheel was secured, and her new shoes were found in the back seat. However, her purse and keys were nowhere to be found. Faye's sudden disappearance remained a mystery until 2006, when a self-proclaimed serial killer named Robert Charles Brown confessed to her murder. Brown had previously pleaded guilty to 2 murder cases, including that of Rocio Sperry, who had vanished in Colorado in 1987 and whose body was never found. Brown claimed that he had encountered Faye Self at the Wagon Wheel on the night she disappeared. He stated that he later went to her apartment, where he worked as a maintenance man. According to Brown, after spotting her asleep in her bedroom, he used a cloth soaked in chloroform to cover her mouth. He then went to search for a rope to bind her with, but by the time he returned, she was already dead. Brown claimed that he disposed of her body by throwing it into the Red River from a bridge. Furthermore, Brown admitted to killing 2 more women in the same area in Louisiana. However, none of his confessions, including that of Faye Self's murder, have been verified or led to a trial. Investigators have been seeking evidence to corroborate his claims, but so far, they have not found any. Brown's alleged victims were predominantly women, though he claimed to have killed a few men as well. Faye Self's family described her as someone who had a wild side in 1983, but they firmly believed that it was completely out of character for her to abandon her child. In 1988, 5 years after her disappearance, Faye was declared legally dead, but her body has never been recovered. Faye Self's case remains a painful and unresolved chapter in her family's life, and the community still seeks answers and closure in this tragic case. On November 13, 1989, Angela Pitts Smith was last seen leaving her home on Shady Lake Parkway in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. After a disagreement with him the previous evening, she left the house in her 1981 Mercedes on the morning of November 14. 3 days later, her husband, George Joey Smith, reported her missing and informed the police of this. He said she brought 2 canvas luggage in shades of gray and black. George hired a cleaning company to take care of their whole home's carpets a week after Angela vanished. The cleaner only discovered one spot, which was close to the foot of the bed in the master bedroom, and the carpet was less than 4 months old. It had a diameter of around 6 inches. Although George identified the stain as a coffee stain, the carpet cleaner said that it was easier to remove than typical coffee stains. George discovered Angela's vehicle on November 17 at the airport's long-term parking area in New Orleans, Louisiana. The automobile had been parked there since November 13, according to a parking receipt found inside. Angela has vanished without a trace. George was suspected by Angela's family members from the start of her absence because they said he had vowed to murder her and conceal the corpse somewhere no one would ever discover it. They said that Angela had informed them that her husband was likely to blame if anything were to happen to her. George's 3rd wife was Angela. Sheila L. Smith, George's 2nd wife, was discovered dead in her St. Landry Parish, Louisiana, home in 1985. George was eventually found guilty of her murder for hire in 1995. Albert Lavallee, a young man who had worked as a farmhand for George, was the real murderer. A lady who shared a home with George was discovered shot to death in her apartment in Lafayette, Louisiana, in 1987. Police investigated her death since it didn't seem to be a suicide. The woman's case never saw the filing of any charges. When Angela was pronounced dead in 1993, police confiscated the $500,000 in life insurance George held on her. In connection with Angela's disappearance, which is still unresolved, George passed away in jail in 2000. He was never prosecuted. Keith Tyndall mysteriously disappeared on June 1, 1983, from Barksdale Air Force Base in Bossier Parish, Louisiana. He had gone camping on the East Reservation of the base with 2 of his Air Force buddies, and none of them have been heard from since. The Air Force has labeled Tyndall as a deserter, believing that he may have fled due to fear of a potential court-martial that was looming over him. Back in May 1982, Tyndall had taken a motorcycle to his home in Florida. Air Force personnel in Florida subsequently confiscated the motorcycle and threatened him with a court-martial for theft. At the time of Tyndall's disappearance, which was over a year later, the investigation was still ongoing. Interestingly, on the day before he disappeared, Tyndall either sold or gave away all of his personal belongings. He also withdrew $900 from his bank account and purchased a motorcycle from another airman. However, Tyndall's mother does not believe that her son would have deserted voluntarily. Both she and the local civilian law enforcement believe that Tyndall may have met with foul play and that his body could be buried in the 18,000-acre wilderness area to the east of the Air Force Base. Tyndall's mother hired a private investigator who has raised the possibility that Tyndall could have been killed in a robbery. It's worth noting that the two friends Tyndall went camping with are no longer in the Air Force. Keith Tyndall was a native of Florida and was known as a bright student in high school, earning straight A's. He joined the Air Force in 1980 and served until 1982, during which time he was stationed in Wichita, Kansas, and San Antonio, Texas, before moving to Louisiana. At the time of his disappearance, Tyndall was working as a metal fabrication specialist. He had maintained regular contact with his family, writing letters to his sister every 2 weeks and calling her once a week from Florida. However, none of his family members have heard from him since his disappearance. As of the last known update, Keith Tyndall's case remains unsolved, and there has been no trace of him since 1983. His family continues to seek answers and hopes for any information that could shed light on what happened to him. On March 1, 1986, Deborah Woodson was last seen in Pineville, Louisiana. She lived in Pine Highland Apartments located on the east side of the town off Highway 28 on the 1800 block of Sunburst Lane. Between 3:30 and 4 p.m., she was seen getting into a man's car and leaving her apartment complex. According to the man she was with, Woodson started feeling ill after they had spent about 15 minutes together. He stated that he dropped her off near the mailbox so she could check her mail before taking her back to her apartment complex. However, Woodson never picked up her mail that day, and she did not show up for work that night at the post office in Alexandria, Louisiana. She has not been seen or heard from since. On March 4th, her ex-husband went to her apartment and found it locked, with their 2 young sons, ages 5 and 7, alone on the balcony. He reported her missing to the police. When the police arrived, they found Woodson's late-model, beige, 2-door Mercury Lynx in the parking lot as usual. There were no signs of a struggle or criminal activity inside her apartment. However, 2 glasses were found on the kitchen counter, and the bathtub was filled with soapy water, suggesting that she might have been interrupted while preparing for a bath. About a month after she was last seen, Woodson's purse was found hanging on a branch in Flagging Creek along Highway 28 East, near Esseler Regional Airport, east of Pineville. The purse contained her wallet, driver's license, credit cards, and photos of her sons, but no money. One of the lenses of her glasses, which were also in the purse, was broken. Woodson never collected her final paycheck. Her family stated that she enjoyed her job, which she had held for about a year, and it would have been out of character for her to leave without giving notice. Moreover, they believe she would never have abandoned her children. After her disappearance, the children stayed briefly with their father before being placed in an orphanage. Woodson's family suspects that she was murdered. Her case remains open and unsolved. On September 17, 1993, a woman named Amanda Southern was last seen in Catahoula Parish, Louisiana. At the time, she was visiting family in DeVille, Louisiana. On that fateful night, Amanda and her nephew decided to spend time at the Driftwood Lounge on Highway 28, near the border with LaSalle Parish. At some point between 3:30 and 4 a.m., Amanda informed her nephew that she was leaving the lounge with another patron and would return to their residence later in the morning. She was believed to have left with a Caucasian man, who was known only as Bill or Billy. This man was described as being in his mid to late 20s, with shoulder-length brown hair, a full beard, and was seen wearing a Western-style hat. He was driving a dark blue Ford pickup truck, thought to be either a 1988 or 1989 model, with a chrome front bumper. Tragically, Amanda Southern never returned home and has since disappeared without a trace. In a disturbing development, approximately 6 months after her disappearance, Amanda's blood-stained shorts and purse were found in a wooded area in LaSalle Parish in March 1994. Amanda was a mother to 3 young children, one of whom had a disability. In her absence, the children were initially left behind. Their father, who was of Kuwaiti descent, had been in Jordan at the time of Amanda's disappearance. He subsequently took custody of the children. However, a year later, he allegedly tried to sell the children to Amanda's parents for $2,000. He was also accused of neglecting the children and illicitly selling human organs. Amanda Southern has been declared legally dead, but her case remains open as of the last known update. Her family and the community still seek answers and justice for her disappearance. The tragedy of Amanda Southern's disappearance continues to affect those who knew her, and the circumstances surrounding her case remain a mystery. Authorities and her loved ones continue to hope for any information that could shed light on what happened to her that night in 1993. Jonathan Tucker mysteriously disappeared on September 7, 2020, from the 600 block of Susan Drive in Hammond, Louisiana. On that day, he told his mother that he planned to help her pay for a new roof for her house, even showing her his bank account balance. At around 6:30 p.m., Jonathan left to celebrate Labor Day with an African-American male who was driving an older model white Lexus with rims. Unfortunately, Jonathan never returned home, and no one has heard from him since. His family grew increasingly concerned when they couldn't reach him by phone as it had been turned off. Adding to their worries, Jonathan did not attend his uncle's funeral, an event that, according to his loved ones, he would not have missed under normal circumstances. On September 9th, the day after the funeral, his family reported him missing. In June 2021, 9 months after Jonathan's disappearance, Christy Beebe McKnight was named a suspect in his case. A warrant was issued for her arrest on charges of obstructing justice. She remains at large and is believed to possibly be in Houston or Katy, Texas. As the investigation into Jonathan Tucker's disappearance continues, evidence suggests that foul play is involved. His family is anxiously awaiting any information that could provide closure and answer the questions surrounding his sudden and unexplained disappearance. Larky Toops disappeared under mysterious circumstances on January 1, 2008, in Bogalusa, Louisiana. He had been at a friend's house until around 8:20 p.m. Later that night, at approximately 9 p.m., police officers found Toops wandering outside. He was clearly intoxicated but still coherent. Instead of arresting him, the officers helped Toops check into a room at the Budget Inn on Austin Street and saw him go into the room. However, about 2 hours later, a hotel employee noticed that the door to Toops's room was open. His identification and room key were inside the room, but there was no sign of Toops himself. He has not been seen or heard from since that night. According to Toops's family, he has a tendency to become disoriented when he has been drinking, and they believe he may not have known where he was on the night he disappeared. His lack of contact with his family is highly uncharacteristic, according to relatives, who fear that he may be deceased. Law enforcement has indicated that they have 2 suspects in custody who they believe may have been involved in a robbery and accidental killing of Toops. At the time of his disappearance, Toops was living in Galliano, Louisiana, which is about 120 miles from Bogalusa. He was employed as a crewman on a tugboat. There is a possibility that if he is still alive, he could be in Mississippi. As of the last known information, Larky Toops's case remains unsolved. His family continues to seek answers and hopes for closure regarding his mysterious disappearance.